What's up, YouTube? It's your boy Rex Righteous, and this is another episode of Uptown Boxing with my host and co-host Hector Franco. We don't really call each other co-hosts. I don't really fly with that way. I think we're both hosts. We're both bosses here. But anyway, we wanted to touch on some topics. We wanted to see what's going on. What's with what's been going on this weekend and all these other events. How do you have it, Hector? How do you feel?
All right, let's first take a look at the Charlo brothers doubleheader pay-per-view that took place this past weekend. I think it was in Ucansville, Connecticut, something like that.
Okay.
And first thing I want to take a look at is the first of the two main events. Jamal Charlo won a unanimous decision over Sergey Derevianchenko, defending his WBC middleweight title with scores of 116, 112, 118, 110, and 117, 111. For me, this was Charlo's first real test at middleweight. I think he was kind of entering the proving grounds and the division. Before that, he'd fought Hugo Centeno. Uh, who else was there? Matvey Korobov, Dennis Hogan, and I forgot the first cat he even fought who had like a messed up leg during the fight. So this was
Oh
definitely his
wow,
first
I
true
remember that
test at
fight.
middleweight, right? It was at the Barclays Center. Yeah,
Oh
that
my
was
God.
yeah, that guy looked pretty terrible that night, but. I do want to say that Charlo's performance against Derevyanchenko, I think, was likely the second best performance of his career. I still think his fight against Julian Williams is probably his best overall performance, because he was fighting an undefeated guy and won by stoppage in the fifth round with an amazing counter uppercut. But I thought he looked great against Derevyanchenko, who definitely pressured him, who was there all 12 rounds.
Yep.
Um, and I thought Charlo was showed a lot of composure for someone who was constantly getting attacked by Derevianchenko throughout the fight. I thought it was a very entertaining bout too. There were a lot of I think real competitive rounds where it was close but clear rounds for Charlo, if that makes sense. Where I think the rounds were real competitive, close, but I think it was obvious a lot of the rounds that Charlo did win. But what were your thoughts on Charles' performance?
I mean, I agree. Ultimately, like the way I saw it was that it was a close fight, but the more clear, more effective punches were coming from Jamal. And I think he is kind of like a unicorn when it comes to that division, like his size and his the way he moves and stuff like that. It is a little advanced and he's very athletic. Like I gotta give it to him. He looked really good against Sergey. Um, he, I do agree with the commentators though. Like he should have went to the body a little more. But ultimately he held
Yeah.
his ground and he dealt with the pressure pretty good. It's just, he's more of a counter puncher right now. He should have knocked him out with the amount of volume he was putting out. He should have
Mm.
knocked him out, but ultimately, I think I agree with the score and everything. I just feel like he should have knocked him out.
So you had it fairly wide for Charlo. Then you thought like 8-4, 9-3 was about right. Then
Exactly. That's
yeah.
like
Okay.
fair. A4 is
All right.
fair because like I said, like if he would have had more body punches, he probably would have dropped him because like he wobbled him in one of the rounds. I believe it was like the fifth round or something like that. He wobbled him
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Absolutely. I think it
like
was the eighth round too. I think he might have heard him. Now I didn't see the fight more than once, so I do need to go back and watch it. But I think
yeah,
the eighth round too was one where it looked like he hurt Derevianchenko. So hey man, at the same time, you can't knock out everybody, but I
right.
definitely agree with you. That's definitely something him and Ronnie Shields will probably go back, on the tape and take a look at that. Especially if he's gonna be hopefully now fighting the other champions in the division. And let's actually move into that next. So, Charlo, personally, the fight I want to see the most is between, of course, him and Canelo. But I do think at this point, Canelo's been weight hopping. His last fight was at light heavyweight. and then before that it was at middleweight, and then before that it was at super middleweight against Rocky Fielding. And we'll get into a little bit more about Canelo here in here shortly. But I mean, you how would you see that fight? Is that something that, as of right now, if that were to actually happen, would you favor Charlo over Canelo? And in fact, would you favor Charlo over Gennady Golovkin, who holds the IBF title, and even WBO champion Demetrius Andrade at this point?
Demetrius Andrade. I think that will be a much better fight in my opinion than the other two. Gennady. I don't know. I'm not sure if his style benefits. I don't know if Charlo style benefits Gennady anymore. Because like he didn't look that good versus Derevyanchenko. And everybody knows I love Triple G.
Big fan, big
And
fan of Triple
yeah,
G's for
big
sure.
fan.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are right too.
Yeah, of course, man. I mean, Triple G is a guy who has a great chin, has, a set foundation of skills, highly decorated amateur. And in today's era where a lot of guys weight hop, they'll move up in weight class, fight one of the weaker champions, make one defense and then move up. So there's not a lot of imprint being left on a lot of weight classes, I think, in this
Hmm.
era. So I think it's a positive for somebody to stay in one weight class and to kind of cement their legacy there. So yeah, I'm definitely a fan of Golovkin's. I will say that I think that we'll see how Golovkin looks when he comes back. I think that Golovkin Derevyanchenko fight, that was an absolute war, one of the best fights of 2019. I'm
Yeah.
not sure. It had been a whole year since Derevyanchenko fought. I'm not sure how big of an effect or impact that fight with Golovkin had on Derevyanchenko. There's reports from reporters like ESPN Steve Kim, Ring Magazine's Michael Montero, and Ring Magazine's Doug Fisher, who reported saying, like, after seeing Derevyanchenko at the hotel after the fight with Golovkin, how he looked. I guess they called it I'm not. I don't think I'm using the right term. Like raccoon eyes, where his eyes looks kind of swollen and black. So he
Yeah.
he looked. Basically, what they're saying is, he looked like he might have won the fight, on the scorecards, but he didn't look like, physically he looked like he was in a war and that he took a beating. So I don't know how big of an impact that would have had, but I will say this. I would love a Golovkin Charlo fight. I think that the main difference we'll see is that Golovkin is taller than Derevyanchenko.
Okay.
He's a little bit shorter than Charlo. He is
He
past his
fights a
prime
little
though.
different. He
He
fights a little
fights
different.
different, and most
Ye-
importantly, Golovkin has, in my opinion, the best jab in the business, in all of
Okay.
boxing. So we'll see. And Golovkin, although he hasn't shown it basically since he stepped in the ring with higher competition, starting with Danny Jacobs, that he used to be a monster to the body. That's kind of gone
Yeah.
away over the last few fights, but the jab itself, I think, could definitely cause Charlo some problems.
I mean, cutting off the ring is something that I don't think Charlo has ever dealt with. Like, cause the thing is,
Ah, right,
like, someone that's constantly, cause this is what you get when you get Triple G. This is that as soon as the bell rings, he's cutting off the ring. Like,
right.
50% of the ring is gone. You
And he
can't even
knows how
use
to
it.
do it too
Yeah,
with his
and
foot positioning.
he's an assassin. So the thing is, like, obviously Canelo in the second fight, he learned how to adjust to that, but you need one fight to know how to do that, and
Right.
Canelo's Canelo, so he has the training $1 million uh things to get him ready, you know what I'm saying? uh
Yeah.
but going back to the question, I like those fights, but I don't know if Golovkin can pull that win off.
Right. If
That's
he, I would,
when
it's like one of those fights we got to see, for
Yeah, I
sure.
would have to see. I would have to see how they
Yeah,
train, because Golovkin's out of my. He's not in my memory right now. The last thing I remember is him having a problem with Derevyanchenko, and that's
right.
who Charlo just beat. And then you got the matchup with Charlo versus Canelo. Now that fight would be an explosive fight. I don't know if they would take it,
Absolutely.
but
I mean, Leonard Ellerbe had, to me, kind of felt like a set up a false narrative, at least to me.
Okay.
We could talk about it where he said that Canelo would stay away from Charlo, kind of insinuating that he'd be afraid of Charlo. But to me, that seems strange because although past his prime, he did just knock out a light heavyweight champion. You know what I mean? Like, and that wasn't in a
Kovalev.
catch weight or anything.
Yep.
Regardless, Kovalev, he was past his prime. At the least, he's a top 10 or was a top five light heavyweight, and he got knocked
The
out by
heavyweight.
Canelo.
Light
Um,
heavyweight. I'm sorry.
yeah, and to me, it seems weird for Ellerby. And I know he's a promoter, so he's gonna say certain things, maybe to goad. Certain people may or may not be paying attention, but I think any narrative that, and this goes for almost any fighter, that Canelo would be scared to fight Charlo. I just don't see that happening. Unless there's also the anti-Canelo crowd out there who believe and rightfully so that he kind of waited Triple G to get a little bit older before he fought him. But I don't think he's scared of Charlo. I don't know if that fight will happen, mainly because of what's going on with Canelo and his promoter and his broadcast partner. But also, I'm not sure if Canelo's going to come back to middleweight. I mean, there's plenty of people for him to fight at super middleweight. This year he
Yeah.
was supposed to fight Billy Joe Saunders in May. Of course, coronavirus happened, but and that was
Yeah.
going to be at super middleweight. Then there was fights with Callum Smith.
That's a
There's a
damn good fight.
yeah,
That's a
there's a bunch
damn
of
good
fights,
fight.
man, for Canelo. Canelo's, the world is his oyster, man. So, I would have loved to have seen Charlo and Daniel Jacobs fight, as well,
Hmm.
but I think Jacobs is now, just a super middleweight at this point. So for me, I think the best fight for Charlo, is against Demetrius Andrade. I think that's definitely a fight that we would all love to see. I think eliminate another one of the whole cluster of titles in every single
Yeah.
division, and that's going to be a whole nother topic too, because the WBC and WBA, they got interim regular super champions, and now the WBC has a franchise champion, making it just all the more a joke, at least
Too
to me. I know
crazy.
belts
Too
definitely
crazy.
matter, especially to fighters, and I don't want to downplay that, but some of it's going a bit overboard with some of the kind of happenings that's with the titles here in this era. But
Well, I feel like he's might go away from the zone thing because like if he's not really messing with them right now, I don't think he's gonna fight a zone fighter. You feel me?
who
So
is Charlo or
Canelo, or were
or
you saying that Canelo was gonna fight
oh,
Andrade?
no, Charlo fighting Andre.
Andrade.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think they
That
would
I
they would
like that
cut a
fight.
deal. I'm assuming that Charlo would probably want to see himself as, like, I guess, if there's the whole A side B side argument, but I think that what Charlo did against Derevyanchenko was prove for sure that he's definitely a top middleweight.
Yeah,
Because
he's legit. He's legit for
he's
sure.
definitely legit at that weight. And then kind of moving into the actual, what I think was the main event, I think it should have been
Hmm.
the main event, rightfully so, was Jermell Charlo
Hmm.
taking on the Dominican Republic's Jason Banana Rosario.
Yep.
Hilarious nickname there.
Hmm.
And he stopped him in the eighth round after knocking him down, I believe, in the first, sixth round, and then in the eighth round. It was a kind of a strange knockdown. It was a jab to the body, and I think maybe it's just one of those things where you hit him in the right place at the right time.
Yep.
I think it looked like, man, he was having trouble breathing, like he was convulsing on the canvas.
Damn.
Maybe he got the wind knocked out of him, but end of the day, you only got to the count of 10 before it's a wrap.
Yeah.
So, he caught him with a good jab, and definitely added the WBA, IBF, and Ring Magazine junior middleweight titles to his WBC title. So he, to me,
Oh
is
wow.
the number one guy at junior middleweight, bar none, without question.
Yep. And he deserves it
He
because
deserves.
he just earned a whole bunch in one fight. I didn't really like the knockout. I was not impressed like that, but his style is really nice. Like I always thought he was a good fighter. It's just, I haven't seen enough from him until like now, because obviously you gotta earn your stripes. You feel me? Like there's not always gonna be room like that when it comes to, you know, giving people the praise and saying that they're like really great or whatever. But he earned his stripes, and you got to give it to him. I didn't know much about Jason Rosario. I didn't know much about him, and the funny thing is, I'm a supporter. When it comes to all Dominican fighters and all
Right.
people of that background, I'm always trying to give a shout out and things like that. But this guy just was not on my radar, and that I was not impressed. Again, I was not impressed with the knockout, but overall, like the fight itself was clean, and he, you know, Jamel, he did his thing, man. I
It,
can't hate.
basically, what you're saying, you feel like it was a good win, and maybe not a great win for him. Like it was a good, solid win,
It was a
essentially.
solid win, but I'm
Right.
pretty sure for his resume and for as hard as he fights and as hard as he works, it was a great win on for his camp. So like I said, like I'm giving props. I'm trying to give
Right.
props to this guy because like he deserves it. You feel me? Like he's still out there. And another thing is too, like we got to give props to his people that made the fight for him. 'Cause there are a lot
Yeah.
of people that aren't fighting, and he just achieved something in an
Yeah, and it
era
was on
where,
pay-per-view.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So he got the
Yeah.
look, he got the shine, he came out with the W, he got a knockout. It still goes down on paper as a knockout. So you
The
know what I'm
only
saying?
thing is, with it being a pay-per-view, man, I hope for their sake that it did well. Basically, for the company to cover all their bases. I don't want to see more pay-per-views in this era, but they had a lot of competition. They had UFC that night. NBA game was playing that night, and I believe there might have been a hockey game too, like Tampa Bay Lightning. Although hockey, I don't think
Yeah.
is a major sport, just like boxing is in the United States, but it had a lot of competition to it, and
And
I
I
think,
think football was the next day too, so a lot of
yeah,
people
yeah, yeah,
gearing up
you're
for
right,
football, and,
and
and there's so much
yeah,
going on.
football reigns king in the United States. I'm in Florida, so I definitely know that,
Yeah,
almost anybody else in the country, but
it's
um,
unavoidable.
it's unavoidable. Yeah. I mean, my question is, so Jermell Charlo is in a unique position. I haven't heard any rumors of him having any trouble making the junior middleweight weight class. Essentially, he should be. In any other era, he probably would be considered the undisputed champion. He holds three of the four major titles. The other title holder is WBO champion Brazil's Patrick Teixeira, who I believe is promoted by Top Rank. Although, for me, he's actually best known for getting starched by Curtis Stevens a few years ago. I think on the Canelo
Mm.
Khan undercard.
Wow, I haven't
Anybody
heard
out
that
there?
name in a minute.
I know, yeah, Curtis Stevens, man.
Oof.
So I think Charlo could stick around at junior middleweight if he really wants to have a legacy in one weight class and let his brother kind of attempt to reign supreme at middleweight if he's not
Yeah.
having trouble making that weight. Or they could go the Klitschko route. Both of them reign at middleweight. But I'd like to see him stay at 154. I mean, there's still a lot of good fights. Arislandi Lara, is still around. That'd be an interesting fight with a storyline because Lara is trained by Ronnie Shields, who, Jermel left, to be trained with Derek James, who trains, Errol Spence Jr. You
Yeah.
got Brian Castano, who fought Lara, still undefeated. Maybe a third fight with Tony Harrison, although I don't know if we need to see that. But that
I
was
see
the
something of Lubin. Lubin wants a
Erickson
rematch.
Lubin. He was in a WBC title eliminator, so
Mm.
technically that's a fight that could happen, an Erickson Lubin rematch. Although it's hard to justify first round knockouts for um, title defenses or rematches, I should
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's hit or miss. So out of all the four major belts, the IBF I think is the one that constantly does their mandatories more. So it can be a good and bad thing. So for example, we were talking about Derevyachenko earlier. He definitely proved to us and all the fans that he definitely deserved a title shot
Right.
against
Right.
Triple G. But I think it was smart for Golovkin's camp to choose not to fight him before the second fight with Canelo, and instead fight Martirosyan, or Vanes Martirosyan, excuse me,
Okay.
because that fight with Derevianchenko could have, halted the rematch with
Hmm.
Canelo. But on the flip side, this weekend we also had Josh Taylor score like a 41-second knockout against a random, no disrespect, I think his name Amanu Kwangsong, a largely unknown Thai fighter who just got blown out by a body shot in 41 seconds. So
Damn.
there's, it's like 50-50. There's good and bad mandatories, and I think each one needs to be treated with nuance, and when a mandatory should be absolutely taken care of versus maybe just skipped over without a fighter being stripped.
No, I mean, I agree. Not much I could say really when it comes to Charlo because he's done so much in such little time in the past year or two. You know what I'm saying? And then when it comes to the middleweight division, if that wasn't his brother, they would be fighting each other eventually down the road. I mean,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
else would he have? Like, there's not that much to offer unless we're talking about those guys and in the middleweight division. So he might have to jump up. I think for the future, he's gonna
Yeah. I
have
mean,
to
I,
definitely consider that.
I could see that. I think that there's still fights for him at 154, but I could understand why. I mean, maybe eventually some of the guys from welterweight might move up. Specifically, I'm looking at Terrence Crawford. I think while Spence is kind of taking care of his PBC welterweights, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Crawford, although I'm hearing, more and more rumors that the fight with Kell Brook is finalized, but what about, hey, Terrence Crawford move up to 154? Maybe pick up that belt from Patrick Teixeira, the WBO belt, and hey, Terrence Crawford against Jermell Charlo. I mean, I don't think it's as big as Crawford Spence, but it ain't bad. It's not a bad
No,
silver
it's
medal. You know
not.
what I mean? It's not bad.
And both guys could promote the fight.
Yeah,
It's a legit it'd be like a legit clash because obviously
yeah, absolutely.
the brother Jamal will get involved, and then it's gonna be both camps basically versus each other. The likeliness of it happening, I
Yeah, I
don't
doubt
know.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I doubt it. But if it were to happen, oh yeah, the fans would definitely get a huge treat right there because that would be a great fight. That's old school style with camp versus camp, and then boom,
Yeah,
we get
I,
a
I
great
would
fight.
I would love to see that, and I think it's a great alternative for Crawford and his team to look at, especially because Charlo, at 154. I mean, we named some fights. Arislani Lara, who
Yeah.
holds a version of the WBA 154 belt too. Like,
Oh my
yo,
gosh.
WBA is a disaster. Just kind of side note here at welterweight, they got Manny Pacquiao as the super champ. And we know he officially got the belt, the regular title for Matisse, and then won the real title when he beat Thurman, right?
Thurman, yeah.
But right now, Ugas just last month fought for the regular WBA belt, and then like a week before that, Jamal James beat Thomas Delorme for the interim WBA belt. So it's like you got three WBA welterweight champions right now. It's utterly ridiculous. But just moving on from that,
Yeah,
we got
that's too crazy.
Charlo could fight. He could make a reign there. Because as far as some of the greatest fighters from junior middleweight, it's kind of been used as more of a pit stop. So
Hmm.
for example, like Felix Trinidad in the year 2000, after years
Oh
of
yeah.
rumors of
Yeah.
him, he probably should have moved up in weight earlier. But
Hmm.
he had a lot of issues with Don King in like 95, 97, and that's why you saw him fight less. But luckily, or I shouldn't say luckily, unfortunately, he wasted some of his prime there with that. But once he got to junior middleweight, I mean, he beat David Reed, Fernando Vargas, and probably, and for me, the best fight ever at that weight class. That's arguable though. And then had that one defense against Yam, and look at Floyd Mayweather. Three of the four biggest fights of his career all took place at junior middleweight. You had De La Hoya, Canelo, and McGregor all took place at 154. The only fight that sold more for him or grossed more was the Pacquiao fight at
I
welterweight.
think
So,
he also had Miguel Cotto at 54,
oh my God, thank
right?
you, man.
Right.
I
No,
forgot. Yeah,
I'm
and the
just
Cotto
I'm double
fight. You're right.
checking.
Yeah, no, no, and the Cotto fight that sold, I think, 1.5 mil back in 2012. So yeah,
That's one of my favorite fights.
absolutely.
I'm sorry, I
Yeah,
got it
there
on
it
my
is right
wall.
there. That's one of definitely one of Floyd's more entertaining bouts for sure.
Yeah, but when it
Without
comes to ticket sales and pay-per-view buys and stuff, you are right though. McGregor, all
yeah,
that,
those those three. But no, thank you for reminding me about the Cotto one. For some
no
reason, that
doubt.
flew over my head. But looking back, at junior middleweight, you got guys like Winky Wright, Mike McCallum in the '80s, Thomas Hearns, and then in the '90s, Terry Norris. Um, Terry
Hmm.
Norris is really the main guy, and I think McCallum as well, who stayed at the weight class and kind of established a legacy there. I think Norris or Hearns are usually considered, and McCallum usually the top three, and Winky Wright as the best ever at the weight. And I think Charlo has an opportunity
Wow.
to do that. He would, I'm not sure how much credit he would get for it, but he still fight guys like Jarrett Hurd, Julian Williams. There's a lot of guys for him to fight. I think most likely, I think the best fight for him.
He still
I
hasn't
probably
fought Hurd, has he?
no, he still hasn't fought Hurd, and
That
you
that
never
would be a
know.
phenomenal fight.
Styles make fights. You never
That
know.
would be a phenomenal fight.
Yeah,
Actually, I think both fights you just mentioned though, just right there, just that's enough for me. Like
yeah,
Hurd and Crawford, what? Because you know, obviously, I feel like Terrence Crawford's skill is superior, but
right.
at the end of the day, the fight will be close. Like
Yeah, I
there's
mean, I
not gonna be like a
if
real
Terrence
small
Crawford
fight.
moved up to 154 and like dominated Jermell Charlo, that would be crazy. That'd be extremely
It'll be
impressive.
groundbreaking for
Yeah,
boxing. It'll
yeah,
be
that would be crazy.
groundbreaking.
So I definitely think that both Charlos are in good positions in the future, and I think that this past weekend opened up a lot of people's eyes, and I think they might have gotten more legitimacy because just looking at giving you an example here, the Charlos for me for a long time were kind of more talk than deserving of their accolades. Basically, their talk was bigger than what they had proven. So, for example, like
Yeah.
Jamal Charlo, he won his first belt against Cornelius Bundridge. Was in his 40s, defended his belt against Silky Camphor, fighter out of Florida, and then it wasn't until the Julian Williams fight that he really got more notoriety. It's like, oh, okay, this guy's actually for real good. It's not just all talk. So I think that they accomplished that again this past weekend, where people will take them more serious. It isn't just, it isn't just what you see in the ring, the resume. They have things that can back it up, and they've beaten fighters to back up their talk for real.
Yeah.
Um, kind of segueing here back to Canelo. So, at the beginning of this month, Tuesday, I believe September 8th, Canelo filed a lawsuit against his promoter, Golden Boy Promotions, his broadcast partner, DAZN, and Oscar De La Hoya specifically, which I thought was just funny, for alleging he's alleging breach of contract and seeking a minimum of $280 million in damages.
Wow.
So what it seems like happened from gathering from what I read, is that Canelo and his team feel that maybe Golden Boy in a dealing with him versus how they deal with the zone, they weren't communicating there. There was miscommunication there, and a lot of it where maybe their Golden Boy is promising the zone one thing and then promising Canelo another. Because it seems like Canelo, for whatever reason, does not want to be forced to do a third fight with Golovkin, and the zone I'm guessing is from um, De La Hoya and Golden Boy getting that's something that would be guaranteed from them. And then you have the whole thing, what's considered a premier fighter for DAZN, which for them doesn't mean a quality fight. It means a fight that'll garner maybe a large fan base, maybe a larger subscriber base, more importantly,
I
because they
see
named
what you're
guys like
saying.
they named even De La Hoya as the premier opponent. And then after that, besides Golovkin, a bunch of MMA fighters like,
And the YouTuber, no? Or something
oh
like
yeah,
that.
maybe even yeah, YouTubers as well. Yeah, like Logan
Mm-hmm.
Paul, Jake Paul as premier opponents. So number
Yeah.
one, I think that it's hard to say in this climate with no fans, if Canelo is justified in not asking a pay cut. Um, a lot of other, I don't know if the basketball players aren't doing that, but I don't know how much the NBA makes from live gates, or how much that actually goes to, the basketball players. I'm not privy to that kind of information. In boxing, the live gate, what they make from the audience actually attending there, that's a big part of their purse and how they make
Yeah.
it. So, it's an interesting thing here. I think that Canelo is definitely not going to fight. I don't think for the rest of this year. I would doubt that. But it just screams to me that when that deal was signed in 2018, after he fought Golovkin and then fought Rocky Fielding at MSG, I guess it was too good to be true. 10 fights or 11 fights at 365 mil. It basically, I think that the zone thought Canelo would consistently bring in triple G numbers, or what I mean by that is $1 million pay-per-view numbers.
Hmm.
Where and really Canelo's only had, beside, you got Mayweather, Cotto, and the Golovkin fights, and I think maybe the Chavez Jr. fight might have made a mill too, which is crazy because that's one of the worst fights.
Yeah, that was
Like,
horrific.
yeah, I mean, and that wasn't Canelo's fault either. Wasn't his fault. Um,
No, it wasn't. He came to fight, and he didn't even sit down in the
yeah,
corner.
that was one of those pay-per-views that was used to promote another pay-per-view. That's most memorable for him. Triple G coming out, which was pretty cool. But I don't think DAZN knew what they were getting into with the boxing business. This isn't a sport in the United States that's covered all the time. So, for example, look at First Take on ESPN, The
Yeah.
Jump, um, the shows on Fox, Undisputed with Skip and Shannon, First Things
Yeah.
First. They didn't talk about any of the boxing matches that took place this weekend, or UFC, or hockey, either for that matter. Basketball and football
Football
are
rain. Yeah.
supreme, and maybe sometimes baseball. Although, to be honest, I'm not sure how much coverage that's getting at this point either.
No, they
Um,
get the same amount of coverage as probably even more than boxing and UFC,
yeah,
but
no,
not as
definitely
much as
not as
basketball.
basketball and football. So, you know, um, for me, I just think that with this whole situation with Canelo, Golden Boy, DAZN, it's gonna be out of mind, out of sight for Canelo. I mean, I don't know when we'll see him back in the ring, and hopefully, if we do, we see him against a quality opponent.
Well, the way I see this is basically like Oscar losing out on his golden goose. It's only for so long you can keep someone around like that. If you think about it, most big fighters like that, they usually change promoters, and it's hard to keep these guys. You know what I'm saying? So like this to me is basically a promise that went wrong,
Yeah,
and yeah, and we knew that the Oscar was trying to get YouTubers and stuff like that. He was talking about promoting for YouTube fighters, like YouTube people to fight, like 2 years ago or a year ago. Like the whole thing with Ryan Garcia too is as well, the way he's
yeah.
been promoting him.
Yeah, it's all
Um,
been very publicly, looked at. His issues with, specifically Ryan Garcia and Canelo. There's all been public battles on Twitter and
mhm.
Instagram and stuff. So that's all been, documented essentially, since we can go back to it through social media.
Yeah, and we can see that it was about to happen. The COVID thing, obviously, everything had like everybody's affected by COVID, so
Right.
in
Right.
some way. So like at the end of the day, I knew that this could happen. The only thing is that we never thought that it would be this messy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we never thought that we wouldn't see Canelo fight, because right now he's not gonna fight, and that's
Yeah.
not good. You're saying that this year he might not fight when there's fights out there that he could be. taking right
Yeah.
now. Like
Yeah.
he could be signing something right now, or he could have already signed something. You know
Yeah.
what I'm
I
saying?
mean, I do think that for him though, maybe it's not a bad thing for him to take the year off because while he's only 30, he's essentially been a professional boxer for half his life. He turned pro at
True.
15.
Yeah.
He's having been having knee issues like over the last few. I know he had surgery on the knee. I think following the whole drug testing fiasco before the second Triple G fight. Um, so I know he's 30. He's young, but I don't know if he's like he might be an old 30 for all we know, or an older 30. Although I don't think he's taking too much punishment in the ring. Um, yeah, you're right though. I mean, he it's kind of up to him. It's either there's definitely fights available to him if he wants to fight, but it doesn't seem like he's willing to take that pay cut. If to because then DAZN's not willing to pay him, I guess, the 35 million every fight to fight just anybody. They only want to pay him that 35 million per fight against what they consider premier opponents for their subscription base.
Gotcha.
So to grow their subscriber base. But to me, man, their subscriber base isn't going to grow to me because I just feel like $20 a month for a new subscriber. I think that's a bit
That's
too
a little
much at this
insane,
time,
yeah. And
in
and
my
the
opinion.
whole ESPN deal is much better, much better. I mean, because you're getting every sport. You know what I'm saying? The zone was supposed to provide that, but they promised so much, and I think this is a destroy and rebuild type of scenario where you have to figure out who's the next golden goose.
Right,
But Canelo is the best thing you could ask for. You, I mean, you got AJ there. You got AJ. He's there.
right,
You feel me?
right. Yep.
You dropped the ball. That's it. This is what it comes down to. Like you dropped the ball. You missed out on something huge here, and maybe selling Triple G for the third time was a mistake. You know what I'm saying? Even though I
Yeah,
wanted to see that fight, but it might have been a mistake. The only thing is what are you gonna do with Triple G now?
yeah.
If
That's
you
a
were to
great point. What does
if you
Triple
were
G
to
do?
tell Canelo, no, I mean, yes, we'll grant you whatever you want. You don't have to fight Triple G. Then what do you tell Triple G? You know what I'm saying? That's the thing.
Yeah, that's an interesting point too, man. I mean, um, I think the main point of contention, I feel like I think Golden Boy promised his own certain things, and then Golden Boy promised
Right.
Canelo certain things, and they both weren't the same things, or they didn't
No,
align
they
properly.
were not
And I think
aligned.
that's why we're in this position right now. And also, I think another reason why I think this lawsuit is happening is I think Canelo maybe doesn't want to be with, Golden Boy anymore. I mean, in a sense, I mean, he's big enough to do what Floyd and De La Hoya himself did, or even Miguel Cotto. Just work with these promoters for certain fights only. Like Floyd, during his Showtime run, worked with Golden Boy a lot at that
Yeah.
time, and before there was the advent of the PBC. He was being promoted, or his fights were being co-promoted with a Golden Boy, using their services for that. So, I mean, we'll definitely see. I think it's interesting. I don't know how big of an impact it'll have on the rest of the boxing landscape as far as, the zone and the streaming services and
Yeah.
what is or what won't be on pay-per-view. And remember when the PBC first came out, their whole stance was free boxing, no more pay-per-views. And you go to 2020, we got the Charlos, we got Garcia against Spence,
Yeah.
Wilder Fury on pay-per-view. So for what is being demanded by the fighters to be paid, and at the end of the day, I'm not gonna tell them what they should or shouldn't be paid because they got to get up and go through the grind
And
of having a training camp and
and they have a
boxing
coach and
standards.
trainers and
Yeah.
and family and. Hmm.
And boxing is dangerous, man. You put your life on the line when you get in the
Right.
ring. So at the end of the day, these guys, if they feel like they should be paid a certain amount to step in the ring, then ask for it. And if you don't, then we won't see them fight. I guess at the end of the day is what it's looking like. But
It's unfortunate. Yeah.
switching gears here to something I think that both of us have been keeping an eye on a lot, kind of switching topics completely from the world of boxing. We're going to go courtside here. We're going to look at the NBA, and specifically the Miami Heat and the Los Angeles Lakers in the NBA Finals. Game one took place last night. I know you dropped your own review.
Yep.
I believe it was earlier today or last night when you dropped that. Um, so first, just I believe the score, what was it, like 118 to 98, something like that, or 96
Yep.
maybe. Um,
Roughly. Yep.
it was from my point of view, the Heat started off well. Of course, the first half of the first quarter, they even garnered a 13-point lead, but just like Miami, and I think it was maybe game five where they lost to the Celtics. They had a great first half there too, and then turned around and had a disastrous second half. And
Yeah.
I kind of figured maybe that would happen with them. Although they played well, certain guys, I was really happy to see Jimmy Butler step it up, especially in that first quarter, taking it
That
to the
first quarter,
hole.
he looked amazing.
Oh man, I was like, yes, that's what I want to see, Jimmy. That's what I want to see from you. But when Tyler Hero got out there, and shout out to him, he's only 20. Um, it seemed to me that a lot of the guys, and him specifically is why I single him out, seemed jittery or nervous out there. Like
Yeah.
kind of taking quick shots. And I know in today's NBA, which to me kind of is sometimes annoying, when guys try to come back from deficits, they kind of go 3-point crazy where they don't really run plays. They just pass the ball once and, shoot a three,
Jacking up
over
threes.
and over.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
that I don't like about today's game, but that to me, even without an audience, the Heat looked jittery and kind of nervous and apprehensive in just the first half. I mean, what did you think about that? Just looking at the first half right now.
Can you repeat the question one more time,
Yeah, how
please?
did you feel like the Heat looked? Do you agree with me? Do you feel like some of them looked a bit nervous out there, or maybe it was just shots just weren't going in for them?
Well, they hadn't faced anybody in the West. That everything in the East was very, very concentrated on. You know what I'm saying? Like all the matchups in the East, the Miami Heat always are thinking about the East because we're always thinking about how to get out of the East. But then when you get to the finals and you're just like, whoa, we just made it. Like, no problem. I mean, yo, Celtics, I'm not gonna lie. Like, there was a couple games that they were difficult, but it wasn't that big of an issue. The Lakers are a totally different team from anybody they faced in the East Coast. So yes, I agree, bro. They were definitely nervous. They started losing people right away. They were basically overextending, over trying to overachieve, and they just couldn't do it. And it's one of those things that 9 out of 10 times that's basically what would happen. Um, if it were me, though, if it were me, and I called this out before game one, I said it. Um, they should have started Kendrick Nunn. Now here's
Oh
where,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, because if you look at the numbers, he actually had more minutes. He actually had more points than some of the people that had more minutes than him, and he only had 20 minutes. You see
yeah.
what I'm saying?
Yeah, he came in. I mean, it was didn't he get like second place on the Rookie of the Year voting?
Yeah.
He was made the first team All Rookie team. He had a great season as well. Yeah, you're right. I'm surprised. That's a great point, man, because he didn't even the Pacers series. I don't think I watched every game of, but even the Boston Celtics and the Bucks series, man, he didn't get that many minutes. Kendrick Nunn. So you're
Well, I
right.
don't know if you knew this, and some people don't because maybe they don't follow the Heat or they don't follow that specific player. There's so much going on in today's uh, lifestyle and everything that's going on in the world. He had the virus.
Oh, that's right. That's right. They did talk about that. Yeah,
Yeah, he had the
yesterday as well.
virus. So,
Yeah, that's right.
so when one has the virus in the bubble, you get treated differently. Like Westbrook went
Right.
through the same thing. And don't get it twisted. I mean, obviously there are some opposers out there of beliefs of how the virus works and blah blah blah, but it still can mess with you, And it didn't look like that last night with
Yeah.
Kendrick Nunn because he was going off, but
Yeah.
you have to have a specific approach, and that was where they messed up. I think Kendrick Nunn deals with pressure better than Tyler Hero, but
Mm,
you know, um, some people just don't respond well to pressure. Some people say, "F it, just gonna do whatever I can and see what I can do," but that's not something that you do versus LeBron James. You see what I'm saying? Like these people, they're very analytical about their stuff. LeBron is always paying attention to everything. You know, he has an incredible IQ when it comes to basketball. And the Heat coaching staff, they didn't take it as serious because they're like, you know what, we got game two, we'll come back and we'll fight again. But what my concern is um can Bam and Jimmy Butler last more than 30 minutes? Because obviously most people are gonna say, well, they're athletes, of course they can last 30 minutes. That's not a problem. But if they're getting beat up like that, you
yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it was
Well,
almost it could have been even worse. I mean, we don't know if Dragic is going to be coming back. He has the
he's not.
plantar
He's not. He's
fasciist
done.
tear.
He's done.
That's
That's
tear. That's right there.
six six to
Yeah.
eight weeks
Oh, they
automatically.
announced that. It's a wrap then. And then Bam had a hurt shoulder. Jimmy almost looked like he rolled his ankle, his right ankle during the game, and I thought it was over for him. I didn't. I'm surprised he even came back there. So yeah, it just seems like the Heat have number one. It feels like it was a bad style matchup for them, kind of how the Heat were for the Bucks.
Hmm.
Because Bam and what do they have? Bam Adebayo and Kelly Olynyk as
Yeah.
their bigs, and then the Lakers got Anthony Davis, Dwight Howard, and JaVale McGee in the
Yeah.
background there, man. And you know, I don't know
Dwight
about
Howard,
so
man.
much McGee, but Dwight
He's still
Howard,
that's still Dwight Howard.
yeah, he's still great defenders, man. And for Bam, he's got to work extra hard. And Bam already, hopefully, maybe when this season is over, he could. I know LeBron did this years ago. I think after he lost to the Mavericks in 2011, call up
Yeah.
Hakeem Olajuwon to get your post game up, man.
Yeah.
Because that's the one thing that is glaringly missing in Bam's arsenal. It's not his effort, not his defense. It's his post up game.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely something because it would be much more of a threat if they
That's a
had
good
that there.
call.
Um,
I like
but well,
that call.
well, but it does seem the second half just I'm expecting because the Heat throughout the playoffs it's like almost like first quarter it's like no not yet, second quarter no not yet, and then third quarter is like okay we're gonna start to actually play, and then the
Hmm.
fourth quarter is like when they turn it up and just take
Yeah.
over the game. So I was kind of half expecting them to get cut the lead, keep playing hard, but I think it was just an overabundance of having to deal with. And then the Lakers, who are not a good 3-point shooting team, went off yesterday,
Yeah.
especially in the first half. I mean, I don't think that's going to happen every game, but the fact that they got it up to like a 30 plus point lead at one point, I think in the third or fourth, man, it was just overall, it has the feelings of the 2018 finals, where the Warriors swept the Cavs, and that was a Cavs team that was similar to like the 2015 Cavs, where it was like a
Yeah.
carry job by LeBron. Um, so it seems, and you never know. Game ones, there's been blowouts before. Look at the Spurs Heat series. Game three in 2013, the Spurs win by 33 points. Then game
Yeah.
four, the Heat win by like 15 points, or I think it was game two actually. They win by 15 points. In game three, the Spurs come back, win by 30 plus points. So this isn't unprecedented. It's just the way it looked made it seem like it could be over, as far as the finals is concerned. It seems like it's imminent, like more of a matter of time, uh,
Yeah.
when not if, essentially for the Lakers.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I think that those threes will remain unless they find uh someone to guard AD a little bit better, so like, you know, Pope and Danny Green hitting them threes, eh, they, we can defend that, but the thing is, you got AD going off. Eventually, what happens in basketball is somebody else is gonna get open,
Yeah.
So that's just it's gonna happen, But somebody has to guard AD. I knew that was gonna be an issue. And I see what LeBron is doing too. He's trying to be strategic. I see that sometimes if he sees that Duncan Robinson is on him or Adebayo's on him, or he sees Adebayo in the key in the paint, he's like, "I'm going at you. I want to take you out the game because those guys are key players. They can switch up
Yeah.
the game and quick." But when you got a guy like Dragic that comes in and he's an offensive threat, and you don't know if he's gonna hit a three or go to the basket, uh, and now he's out. I don't know what to say. As a Heat fan, it's
Yes.
looking like, and I don't want to foreshadow anything because obviously I want my team to win. Obviously I want to have a chance at a title, but I'm a realist. You know what I'm saying? And it looks like it's possible that it could be like the '08 Lakers where they lose horribly. Like when they lost to the Celtics,
Oh
and then the next year they
man,
came
yeah,
back like lions. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
it's very much possible that could happen. Everybody's gonna dog them. Oh, you guys ain't nothing. Blah blah blah. You like the bubble champions. The bubble. You made it to the. You won the East by because of the bubble and blah blah blah. Okay, well, if someone joins us, which is very possible,
yeah,
because everything it might shift in our favor. Having guys like Tyler Hero won't be that bad. You know what I'm saying? Because he's just a
yeah,
rookie. You know what
yeah.
I'm
He's
saying?
just a
Because
rookie, man,
yeah,
and
he can
Bam's only in
play.
his what third or fourth year in the league. Jimmy
Yeah,
still got a lot of years left. I think the only one that we might lose this year for sure, or I don't know for sure, but it's Dragic. I don't. I think his
yeah.
contract might be up. That would be unfortunate if the Heat lost him. But if they could replace him with somebody who is a leader or maybe another what you would consider a superstar. Unfortunately, next year is going to be a lot different because we'll have the return of KD.
Yeah.
To Brooklyn. That would have been tight. Kevin Durant came to the Heat, but it is what it is. There. Um, I do. That's a great point. If people don't remember when you brought up the '08 Lakers, that loss that the Lakers took to the Celtics in game 6 in '08 was like what 131 to like 92 or something like that. Like it was
Yeah.
almost a 40-point loss, man.
I remember that game like
Yeah,
it was yesterday.
it was crazy how like the Boston Celtics just ran them over. And um I wanted to ask you about it. We'll talk a little bit about the bubble here in a minute, but so do you think with how kind of, you look at from the year since the Bulls, since Jordan really left the first time, the 2000s, the first three championships are the Lakers, and then you got the Spurs, then the Pistons, and then the Celtics, right? But the rest of
Hmm.
that is the Spurs and Lakers for the 2000s. Oh yeah, and Miami Heat. I'm sorry.
And the
So 7 out
Mavericks.
of the 10 years.
The Mavericks
Mavericks
too.
too.
Yeah.
Mavericks too. They made it to the final. So, and then yeah, going back to the 2010s, Lakers, then Mavericks, then you had the Miami Heat, then the Spurs, then the Warriors,
OKC going up
Cavs.
there.
Yeah, man. So the Western Conference has dominated the NBA since the dawn of this century, since 2000, man.
Yeah,
Do
that's
you
very true.
think at this point should because they talked about this before the season to doing just instead of 8 teams from the East, 8 teams from the West to just take the 16 teams with the best records in the league, regardless of the West or East. So you could have ended up with like 10 West, a 6 East or something like that instead. Do you think that that's something that they should implement going forward, or maybe try it out next year, or do you think they should just keep the same, 8 from the East, 8 from the West format that they got now, and they've had for I don't know for years since maybe the inception of the NBA?
I mean, they need a little bit more to sell in order for us to like latch on to the idea, because other than it being the best 16 teams, how would it benefit the playoffs? Because these guys have to travel. You know what I'm saying? Like, how would how would that be beneficial? Is what I'm trying to ask. Like, I don't
Yeah, I
see.
guess there the point would be just to eliminate um any I think they want more competitive
Yeah,
games.
the best,
So
and
although
like
to
the
me,
Lakers playing the Bucks right away. Like,
yeah,
I see what you're
that's a
saying.
great point. But
Yeah,
also I do think, kind of playing devil's advocate, I do think that the Eastern Conference, especially just looking at Miami's run, I think Miami had a number of great games in the bubble against the
yeah.
Bucks, against the Celtics. I mean, that game one with that block that Adebayo did to end it was a classic. That's one of those games you'll go back to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, hopefully that's something that's not forgotten. But I wanted to ask you about, as you brought this up, about people maybe putting an asterisk on this season, with it being in the bubble. So Scottie Pippen had a quote, and this isn't verbatim, but saying that he doesn't feel like it's more like pickup basketball at the bubble. They don't have to travel. They don't have to, go into enemy territory in a sense. It's all kind of neutral. But to me, I think it leads more credence to it being even better basketball if guys don't have to travel, if they're more well rested. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? For me, I think I would put an asterisk on this season that it was played in a bubble, but I don't think it necessarily means that it's negative or positive for like it's harder or not as hard. I just think it was something that was different that happened due to circumstances. Same thing as in 1999, where they only played 50 games in the regular season due to a lockout, and in 2012, where they only played 66 games due to a lockout.
Oh, the thing is, there's two sides to what he said. Is like I agree with one side, and then there's another part that I'm like, damn, I feel what he's saying, but I can't agree with it
Right.
wholeheartedly.
Right.
So the one part that I can't agree wholeheartedly is the part where he says it's not competitive enough for him.
Yeah, I disagree with that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
disagree with that.
I completely disagree with that because at the end of the day, they have it in them to always compete for a title, so they can't just take it out of them. I'm not trying to compare them to animals or anything like that, but they're kind of like, you know horse racing kind of mentality, or like, or
Right.
even a track runner, or an Olympian. This is how they operate. This is how they run. They can't just work out and do nothing. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
that part, I throw it out right away. I'm sorry, I can't agree there. um and it is a little true that there is a remix to everything going on. Obviously, look, Westbrook had the virus. These things suck when for us. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When we can't see people playing at their highest form. But this also happens without the virus and before the virus. So that right there, I'm still thinking that we can still argue that. But the other part that I do understand what he's saying is that the atmosphere, and I do know that he is latching on to some things that are being said. There's whispers. Everybody's been saying this. It's just Scottie Pippen's one of the first people to say it out loud, but a lot of people have been saying this, man, and I do kind of understand, because like I said, the atmosphere is different. There's no like game changing moments because there's no audience. So if you're not traveling to these people's backyard, and you don't get to see their fans, you don't get to have to see all the issues while you're going in to the arena or whatever, because they face issues sometimes. You feel me? Like they face certain things that happen, and those things affect the game itself. So that part I do agree with, with the whole atmosphere
Right.
part.
Right. Like the spotlight is higher when you have to deal with, like even free throws, like at the end of the game. Remember that Bucks Heat game where
Yeah.
they essentially won because, and there was bad calls on both and NBA refs. Yo, I sometimes feel like I don't understand the rules in the NBA. I just feel like it's like if you touch a player and it's just like a touch, it's like a foul to me. I guess for me, like I always thought a foul was like something harder, like an actual hit or something. But
Yeah, like a actual
um,
contact, like real
yeah.
contact.
So whatever,
I
because
see what you're saying.
they it almost I guess evens itself out because it feels like there's shitty calls on both sides.
Hmm.
And that Heat Bucks game, there was a terrible call against the Heat, and then one against the Bucks, and allowed Jimmy to
Yeah,
kind of hit two clutch free throws. But
where it
imagine if
looks like a mistake
um
almost.
right, but imagine if there was a whole bunch of fans booing the shit out of him. You know what I mean? Instead, you don't know how that would have affected it, but to me, it kind of evens out because everybody's going through the same thing. And certain people will be able to handle it better than others, just like if it were the other way around. You know what I mean? Some people might play better in the bubble than they would have in front of a lot of people, and vice versa. You never know. But at the end of the day, to me, it kind of seems like this is just pure basketball skill. That's
Right.
it. Like there's
And the
no
hardcores love it.
momentum. Yeah, and
We
so I
love it.
think in some ways that's what's been better about the bubble too. And guys are getting, as I stated earlier, more rest, maybe more time to game
I
plan.
agree with all that.
So
I agree
it's
with all that. It's
I don't
just
think there should be like a asterisk for this saying it's a lesser title than others. I don't, and I don't even agree with that with the 99 either because everybody played 50 games.
I
And
don't agree with it either. Nah.
I know Shaq. I don't know if he has. I think I brought this up before. Some beef with Tim Duncan, where he was talking mad greasy about Duncan earlier this year about him that doesn't count. Uh,
Oh, well,
Tim Duncan
really?
having 5 titles, he only counts four because he doesn't count the 99 title. But it's like Shaq. So basically, what you're saying is when the Spurs swept you in the playoffs in
Talk
'99,
about it.
y'all weren't really playing. Y'all were just it didn't count really because y'all
Yeah,
weren't really. And to me, this is what trips me out about sports.
that was one
For
of
me,
Duncan's best year too, by the way.
absolutely, and he was only that was only his second or third year because I think he debuted it in like 97, 98 season.
Absolute
That would have been
beast.
98, 99
He was
season. Yeah,
beasting.
Duncan was always possibly a guy who had the perfect career in a sense.
Yep.
We stayed with the same team, was always consistent, always in the top two or three for defensive win shares
Yep.
every year of his career.
And he
I
was
mean, that
always
went to the playoffs
outmatching.
every year, man. Yeah, Duncan was another level there, man. But the 99 season, man, or 2012, when they only played 66 games, I don't take that away from the Heat either. I don't think that should really happen. Everybody played 66 games, and we know why, because there was a NBA lockout beforehand. So, I
Yeah.
mean, basically what you're saying is like the teams, they shouldn't count because I didn't win. If the Lakers won the title in 99, Shaq would be bragging about having 5 titles. Period.
Right.
My
Exactly. That's
opinion.
just how
So
it works.
he could say what he wants, but and I don't even know why he would be salty because I think a lot of people would probably still rank Shaq over Duncan. If they had to pick like a team of players or whatever, because of Shaq in his prime is like a different animal. That's like a monster. That's hard to find something that you combat against that. So it just seems weird. It's probably something personal that he has with Duncan for you to even say some shit like that.
It's
Um,
something that he has to do as a journalist now. He
that's a good point. That's a good point.
just making arguments.
Because we know that with Skip and Shannon, like Shannon has more of like the viewpoint that most people have, like the common viewpoint.
Yeah.
Skip will just say some outlandish shit, maybe either because he actually believes it, or it's like he's just saying it just to spark up some trouble, man. But
Yeah.
I wanted to, before we end this, I did want to talk a little bit about the LA Clippers, and get your thoughts on this.
Hmm.
Are they now? Man, as a Spurs fan, I kind of want to, in a way, take myself out of this because with Kawhi, for me, I never had an issue with him if he didn't want to play, if he felt he was, too injured to play. That whole kind of fiasco that happened. To me, it's like you don't want to play in San Antonio. That's cool. And then you know what? He got his whatever kind of vengeance he felt last year. He won a championship with the Raptors. It was like a magical kind of season for him. Everything kind of aligned. Warriors getting injured too, but that shot again over Joel Embiid, them coming back winning four in a row against the
Yeah.
Bucks. It was definitely a special playoff run for him in particular. But now that we know that Doc Rivers is no longer the coach of the Clippers, and the fact that they blew a 3-1 lead in against a team that in the last three closeout games they had double-digit leads going into the third, fourth quarters. I'm not sure if every five, six, and seven they had the double-digit lead in all three of those games, but I know that they had like 16, 19, and
Yeah.
etc. up there. Do you feel like they might be the biggest, one of the biggest busts, basically disappointments for a team in league history, kind of up there with like the Lakers with Dwight Howard and Steve Nash, and maybe even I guess you could consider the Thunder with James Harden and Russell Westbrook and KD when they had all three of them.
Oh man, those are really close ones. I think OKC is a tough one because those guys were young. They had
Right,
so many great
and they
players
made
that
it to the finals too. I
they
mean, they
were they
just
were
yeah,
yeah, and that's the thing. Like being, I think that me because we watch so many different sports, we don't watch the same sport all the time. Like we don't just watch one. I think we're a little bit more understanding for people that do make it to the finals rather than a team that always makes it to the finals or just wins the championship all the time. You gotta be considerate of how hard it is to get to these moments in their
I
lives.
agree. I
You
agree.
know,
Yeah.
it's not easy, and to call them the biggest bust, um, I don't know. I think it's questionable. I think that they should at least be questioned because the thing is, um, these are guys that were supposed to be feared as defenders, and defense
Right.
is
Right.
usually known as more of a thing that's feared in any sport. Forget about it. If someone has defense on their side and they're like number one at that, you're gonna be feared more than if you're an offensive threat. Because guess what? When you're an offensive threat, all they got to do is psych you out, you know, stop you a few times, and that's it. You know, or
And
maybe you go down with an injury. Who knows? But if you're defensive,
yeah.
you're usually known as invincible. In any sport. So I don't know. I kind of agree with it, but at the same time, I feel for them. I feel for them because I feel like the whole what is it the load management thing. I think that they got a little out of control with that, and I
Well,
think
i-
yeah,
is
bro.
is Kawhi still lingering from some injury or not?
He
I
needs
mean,
to. They need to
I'm
get
not
rid of that stuff,
I'm
man.
not
Like
sure if he is or not at this point, but also one of the reasons why this team was one of the most hyped in history is because last year the Clippers were essentially like the Miami Heat. They were this young, scrappy team who took the Warriors like 6 or 7 games. They made it close. But, that was the Warriors when they still had, before KD's injury and before Clay's injury. So, that team's hard to beat or anybody ever.
yeah,
You know what I mean? It's hard to, there's only a few teams that could probably beat those Warriors anyway. But then it was like, okay, this scrappy team who shows a lot of effort, who had the sixth man of the year, Lou Williams. Oh,
hmm
now they're getting Kawhi and Paul George. So before the season even started, people were anointing them and making excuses for them, like, oh, you know what? They're waiting for the playoffs. Oh, they'll get more chemistry, when they start doing this or that more. And it's like they had the trophy with the name on them, like Don King, with
yeah,
Felix Trinidad, the middleweight before he fought Hopkins, he already had the trophy with Trinidad's name on it before it occurred, and
crazy.
that's kind of what the Clippers did in a
You
sense,
can't do that.
more metaphorically, they
hmm
thought that it would be a cakewalk to the NBA Finals, and to me that is surprising because Kawhi is one of the most experienced players who's been in the league less than 10 years. I mean, Kawhi's rookie year, he played for the 2012 Spurs, who had the best record in the league. They won 20 games in a row. They won the last 10 games of the season. Then they won the first 10 games of the playoffs. So
Yeah, I
they
remember
swept the
that.
first two teams, beat OKC, and then, OKC, ended up doing, I don't know what that's called when they win. One team wins the first two, then the other team wins the next four. I don't think that's considered a gentleman's sweep. I think that's like a 4-1. But You know,
Very
they
close to a
lost. Yeah,
gentleman's sweep. It's
yeah.
close
It's
to
like
that,
a
yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much get what I'm saying. And then 2013, he goes to the finals. 2014, he goes to the finals. So this is a guy. And then his whole 2019 run. So 2015, I think they got eliminated by the Clippers. 2016 with the Thunder, and 2017, that was his injury or whatever. So he has a lot of experience in the playoffs. Was my point. More so than even Paul George. So it just seemed to me, and as they've said, Kawhi, I guess is maybe he's not a leader like that, or maybe the chemistry's not there. Where I think with the Raptors, they almost felt like they were suitors, like they were the ones who were trying to get Kawhi to stay, and they even brought Danny Green, like another friend, with him. But they kind of had an established team mindset already. Well, with the Clippers, it doesn't really seem like that. Like Kawhi came in and they expected him to do all this, and maybe be a leader in the sense where he's really not like that. Even with the Spurs, as I think Shannon Sharp said this on the show, where the Spurs, the leaders were Tim Duncan, Manu, and Tony Parker. And then
Well,
even
for
with the
me,
Raptors, it was Kyle Lowry.
and that's the thing. Like Kawhi, he might be the decision maker. He might have the final say in certain scenarios, but I don't think he's a leader. And I think Doc Rivers was supposed to be that. And it sucks that he was thrown under the bus, but you know, you get what you put out there. If you didn't put enough effort in to win those games, then you're not going to get anything back because, like, we all know that that's not the same Paul George that we used to see. Before the injury, he could defend his
Oh
ass
man,
off.
yeah, you're right. Yeah, you go
You
back
know,
to Paul George against those games against
the
the Miami
Heats.
Heat.
Yeah,
Yeah, against when he played with the Pacers,
he
man.
was scary. He was
Yeah, man.
scary to
They
face.
were a
Like this
threat. They
dude,
took him
he
7
locked down the
games.
perimeter, bro. He would lock that whole area down. Like, yo, you're not passing through here. You feel me? And if you are gonna do something, you're gonna get hit. Like somebody's gonna come and hit you because Paul George wasn't the guy that was gonna hit you, but he'll give you that runway to get you knocked down or something, or get you dropped, or the ball gets stolen because Pacers was all about defense back then. But then
Yeah.
now, because this is what I was explaining this to my little brother. He was trying to ask me about him, and I'm saying like there are some players that they are built to defend, and then their defense creates offense. You know what I'm
Mm,
saying?
great point. Great point
Like so,
there.
like Russell Westbrook, I think he has a little bit of that engine in him. You know what I'm saying? To be a defensive guy, stop people and do this and that, and put pressure on people, and then their
Russ,
defense
man,
creates offense.
he's kind of a frustrating player where it's like you look at his effort and it's like, man, dude, this guy is always playing hard, and
Yeah,
then and then there's times where you're frustrated with him because his shot selection, and you know what, it's amplified with him. Or a spotlight is put on him because he's one of the best players in the league. But just like I said, that the whole kind of thing where guys just jack up threes instead of just actually running plays. That's more of a league issue more than just a Russell Westbrook issue. You know what I mean? That's not something that he does on his own. That's a lot of teams do that kind of shit. But I hope that if the Lakers, and it seems that they will, if they win the title here, um, that'll be LeBron's fourth title, with I believe three different teams. Um, do you think that and the whole conversation keeps going about LeBron versus Michael, but for me, looking at it, do you think that um, it brings him the argument close? Because for me, I still have Jordan over him, but do you feel like if he wins a fourth title that brings the debate even closer, or
yeah, it
for you
does.
is it
It does.
something that may or
No,
may not?
no, I'm not cut off that way. I don't do that because the thing is, he is in his 17th year. He is
Yeah,
getting
it's pretty
closer
crazy.
to
Yeah.
topping guys that have 38,000 career points and whatnot like that. So like, this is how I see it. I have a standard. I have my area where it's like It's a window for LeBron. My window kind of closed a little bit when he kept losing, to in the finals. But the fact that he keeps coming back, I'm like, okay, these are my standards now. So basically, he has to two-peat, or he has to get one more ring. Even if he loses again, he has to get one more ring. And if he gets above Kareem Abdul with the career points, you gotta give it to him. You gotta give it to
Oh
him.
man, yeah, that's a big one. Because I think it's Kareem, then Karl Malone, then maybe him, right? Because I think he might have passed Kobe, right?
It's
Something
yeah,
like
it's
that.
Karl Malone. He has to pass Karl Malone and then Kareem.
Right, right.
And if he passes Karl Malone, he's very close. I mean, there are
I
some people
mean,
on the internet that they would just it doesn't matter. He's already number one. But he's definitely in my top five. I mean, if you don't have him
yeah,
in your top 10, that's when I'm like, whoa, like what the hell's going on with you?
yeah.
Like,
I think he's definitely top 10. I think that it depends also how you judge players too. Like there's a couple of
hmm
ways to look at it. I think like if you look overall stats, I think it definitely favors him too. But I think if I could see somebody putting him in the lower top 10 if they just look at somebody's peak. So what I mean by that is if you take Jordan 99, like maybe 89, 93 Jordan, right? That's
yeah,
his peak. Then Larry Bird, like 81 to 86. Magic John, if you look at peaks, not just their entire career of how good they played during a certain time frame, I think there's definitely competition for LeBron there. But to me, LeBron, I look at him kind of like how, like Roy, kind of reverting to boxing, Roy Jones. He doesn't have
mm,
as many title defenses, not as longevity. So he's kind of like Jordan in that sense, right? And then
hmm
Hopkins has that long, extensive, all those title defenses. He's one
a
of the
resume.
oldest fighters ever. You know what I mean? So
hmm
he has that longer like longevity. So it depends on how you look at it. If you just look at somebody's peak, then because some fighters might have had a higher peak than others. Like, even somebody like Pacquiao too. His peak
Yeah,
from 2008 to 2010. You know, it's probably that's probably the main reason he won a fighter of the decade was because of that. That run right there, that peak.
phenomenal.
Yeah, that peak right there. So I think that with LeBron, a lot of people might judge it that way. But as far as if you want to look at stats and numbers, yeah, you can't leave him off the top 10 or even the
No,
top five, man. Because he's first. Like last night, they were pointing out all these like minutes, games played, games won. Yeah,
accolades. Yeah.
yeah, like
hmm
he's first place in so many of these, and you have to give people credit for that too, because as we've seen in basketball and boxing, Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, their careers pretty much ended when it turned 1990, in a sense. I know the
Yeah,
Lakers went to the finals in '91, so maybe less so for Magic. But he got AIDS in '92, and his career was essentially over after that. Although people forget he had a short stint comeback in like '96, where he played for the
right.
Lakers, but I don't think they made playoffs. But um, Larry Bird's career ended in the '80s, essentially, where he had back problems. Jordan's career essentially ended in the late '90s, although he had that comeback against the Wizards. So guys have longer careers now, because and I'm assuming it's because of the technology we have now, the ability to know how to rest your body
The
now,
awareness as
awareness
well,
of
like
things. Yeah, that too.
knowing before it gets any worse.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's a lot of guys. I mean, you look at, boxing too. Like guys like Sugar Ray Leonard were like done at like 32, and it's like,
Yeah.
damn, bro, you still young.
I
Like,
mean, look at Goran Dragic. He's been
yeah,
playing
you're
with a
right.
thing on his leg for
Yeah,
like 2 years now.
yeah,
It's
and
like
then
we know that something's been wrong with you.
yeah,
If
great
you didn't
point,
think
man.
something was gonna happen to him eventually, I
So
don't know what you're watching.
basically, everybody's different. Some people will last longer than others, but I don't necessarily think it means that they're better. So in the peak version, so longevity wise, I think LeBron is better, but as far as their peak when they were at their absolute best, I would still put Jordan over him. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
But
He's so
that it's
dominating with
it's
his style.
definitely an argument. I think the better argument would be with LeBron against Kobe Bryant, right? Rest in peace.
Absolutely.
While LeBron went, to what was it? I think it was like 8 finals in a row, or it was in nine. I know this is
Nine.
his 10th,
I think
so I
it's
think
nine.
in a row was it nine? About like as
Yeah,
far as
because
like
he missed last year.
right. So Kobe also went to the final 7 out of 11 years,
Oh,
and the
okay.
teams he was playing in the Western Conference were all like, he was playing the Spurs a lot, so they were always like 50 plus win teams. So basically, just like Jordan's road to the finals was harder because he had to play the all time great Pistons team, the all time great Celtics teams. You know what I mean? Those weren't just people that in the Eastern Conference that
Great
weren't. I
points.
mean, I don't think anybody that the Miami Heat played, and all respect to the Celtics and the Pacers, I don't think those Celtics and Pacers teams were as good as the '80s Celtics and Pistons teams. But that's an argument and debate because we'll never see them actually play each other.
Yeah, and we'll
You know what
have
I
more
mean?
guests. We'll have more guests on here to have like a more well-rounded uh
Right, right. Perspective on that for sure.
perspective, so like that doesn't come off as one way. But I think that is a unique way of thinking of it, and you brought up some things that I never thought of, and it should be. And I some people have brought that up to me about Kobe. I mean,
Right.
LeBron still doesn't have 5 championships, so we still have
Yeah.
to.
And Kobe has something too where he has the 3 trips in a row with the Lakers in
The
'08,
three
9,
P,
and
the
10,
three
where those
P,
were
right?
those were his teams. Beforehand it was like Shaq and Kobe. Although don't mistake it, they wouldn't have won if they didn't have Kobe on those teams because there were plenty of playoff games, especially the one that stands out to me was man, I forgot. I think it was like game 3 or 4 against the
Hmm.
Pacers where Kobe like went off and essentially pulled that game out for them. So, and I know a lot of people would probably use that to diminish Kobe's accomplishments by saying it was all Shaq. But we could do the same thing where LeBron didn't win a championship till he got with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, and then did the same thing with the Cavs. Got Kevin Love and Kyrie, and you know what I mean. We can all do that.
Yeah.
It's different eras, and that's another thing too. Is this era has the superstars combining with each other, specifically LeBron and KD, with the exception of the 2016, 2015 Warriors, where that was all a naturally great team, and the Spurs as well. But in the '90s, it wasn't like imagine if Mike went or Charles Barkley and Gary Payton they left and went to the Bulls. You know what I mean? It's kind of like
Yeah.
that. You didn't have that in those eras, so it's different. There's some things that are going to be harder and some things that'll be easier in each era.
Well, I like to put a bow on it because um I want to say these last things. For me, it comes down to dynasties. Like when is it that LeBron had a dynasty, and that's where the issue comes
Great point.
around. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Being that Kobe stayed with his team, it's almost like he had 2 eras, but that also makes it one dynasty
Right. Right.
because it's
Right.
Kobe. It's Kobe.
Yeah.
He has
He's
the
got the
resume.
Shaq and Kobe dynasty, and then he's got the the Kobe and Pau Gasol
Yeah,
Meta World Peace kind of where it's really
Lamar
his
Odom.
team, Lamar
Yeah,
Odom kind of piece there, where
Phil
LeBron
Jackson, because he still have
LeBron
Phil Jackson
has,
with all those
I guess you
guys.
could say it would be the Heat. I mean they did back to back,
For the
so
most part, yeah.
I
But
think the
he
Heat
would probably be redefining what he is with the Lakers, and
yeah, good point. Yeah,
he's chasing a ghost, and I don't know if he's gonna get there. So that's why I'm saying I want to tie the bow on there because being that Jordan had his dynasty, it is a dynasty. Curry,
yeah,
when you have that, it pushes you
yeah. It
towards the
pushes you
top.
up, and
Yeah,
I
and
I,
these
I agree with
guys that like Kareem or whatever, if they have the career points or Bird, that's a dynasty. You feel
I
me? Like you,
actually think of LeBron kind of like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar now, where Anthony Davis is like Magic Johnson. I'm not saying like how they play. What I mean by that
I know
is
what you're saying.
Kareem is like already a guy who's considered the best in the league, and then he's getting another guy to kind of give him another run of championships, and they turn
Yeah,
into the Showtime Lakers, and
No, it's
We'll see
definitely
what
that
happens.
because
Yeah, yeah,
Kareem was feared even when he got to the Lakers. He was feared. You know, he was
yeah.
a really great player. No one could block that sky hook. So of
Yeah,
course,
one of the great probably as like best basketball player period. Like if you counted like high
high
school
school.
and
Yeah,
college, yeah,
hmm
he's number one, like for sure. Like
yeah.
if you count all of that shit,
He's
he's
a
number
college
one before.
god. His
Yeah,
numbers are
yeah.
insane.
Which was weird that I think last year they rated Jordan over him college wise for like best college basketball player ever, which I
Yeah,
thought was a bit strange. But hey,
but you can't.
MJ was good
That's
in
not
college.
really that. You can't really argue that. Like you could argue
Yeah, I don't
more
think so.
the
Yeah,
NBA one, but the Kareem one
yeah,
in
yeah, for sure.
college.
Yeah,
Come on,
I agree with that for sure.
beast.
Yeah, he was a dominant player like we've never seen pretty much.
Yeah,
Like
he was
only
probably already NBA ready too.
yeah, probably. But all right, well, we're gonna end the show on that note. If you guys have any questions or anything, you could always send it to us. We're both on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You could reach me at Hectorgram or at Front Proof Media on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. And go ahead and give them your social media.
At Ref Legend 193, and we also have a boxing group called ADM Boxing on Facebook. So if you want to subscribe there or comment or come through and check it out, feel free. There's a boxing group on Facebook, and also if you guys want to comment LeBron James, we'll give you a shout out in the next video. I want to see you guys commenting so like that we could give you some shout outs in the next podcast. So please do so.
Yeah, if you guys want, leave some questions in the comments section. Some of those questions we can use on the next show and answer.
Yeah. So for now, we'll be returning in a couple of weeks or a couple of days. We don't know, but please tune in, rewind this. Let us know what you guys think. We're gonna be out. It's me and Hector Franco signing off, man. Boxing
Peace.
updates, classicness. Peace out.